26-year-old Brigitte Harris was born on June 6, 1981, in Staten Island, New York, to Liberian immigrant parents. She lived in an apartment in Park Hill with her mother until the age of 2, at which point she was abandoned by her mother and put into the foster care system. In 1984, her father, Eric Goodridge, took her and 3 other children in. Her father, Eric, had once been a familiar face in the Staten Island African expat community. He had left Liberia and started several businesses, including records, import and exports, and a taxi service. Brigitte's mother remembers him as a philanderer with a prevailing interest in young girls. In one of Brigitte's earliest childhood memories while in his custody, she was sexually assaulted by her father at the tender age of 3. At 12, Brigitte was sent to live in Liberia with her mother, and what she hoped would be a tearful reunion turned violent and extremely abusive, leaving her with permanent scars. Life with her mother became so unbearable that she actually went to live with her father again. Her father then left Brigitte with his new girlfriend, who also became physically violent with Brigitte, and on occasions, she would pour a solution of ground hot peppers into her wounds. In 1996, during a flare-up in Liberia's ongoing civil war, Brigitte took advantage of a free airlift out of Liberia to flee her father's girlfriend, and her father took her in again in New York. She was 15, fully into puberty, and he took full notice. He continued to pursue her, repulsively telling her, "In Africa, fathers sleep with their daughters to show that they love them." A half-sister and aunt promised to help Brigitte, but in 1997, her father took Brigitte once again to go back with him to Liberia. On New Year's Eve in 1997, her father attempted a sexual attack on Brigitte for the last time. She was 16. At 17, she was finally able to get out and stay with her mother until she turned 18. At this point, she qualified for a repatriation loan and headed back to America. While in New York, Brigitte tried to build a new life for herself. She stayed with family between stints at women's shelters. She finished high school and went to college for a year, then got work as a $17 an hour security guard in Kennedy Airport. She also made some friends on MySpace and started dressing goth with spiked collars and multicolored hair extensions. Her father made a brief appearance in 2002. He came toward the door as Brigitte was looking after her niece and nephew in Staten Island. Brigitte called her sister Carlene in a panic and later locked herself in the bedroom. They wouldn't see each other again for 5 years. She later moved to an apartment in Rockaway Park in 2006, while her mental health took a back seat. In April 2007, she swallowed some pills at work. When an ambulance arrived, she went home, refusing to talk about why she did it. However, a few weeks later, she learned from a family friend that her father was coming back to America and staying in her sister's house with her sister's young daughter. Brigitte went to Staten Island that day, half hoping her sister Carlene had thrown him out. Like Brigitte, Carlene had also been sexually and physically abused by their father, but she had been spared the trips to Liberia as a teenager. They both had different ways of coping, where Brigitte stated, "She deals with her past one way, and I deal with it another." But she just couldn't understand how Carlene could take him in. Now watching her father with her young niece, she felt she had to do something. She searched the web for solutions, saying, "The first thing I did was find out if I can go to the police. The statute of limitations says they couldn't do much about it. He hadn't touched me since I was 17, 18 in Africa, which wasn't even here. I couldn't go to them and say, 'I think he's going to molest my niece.' There's no record. My family's not backing me up. So I'm thinking, stop him any way you can." She and her father agreed to meet on the morning of July 28, 2007. He would come to her place where they could talk. He seemed even weaker than he did a month earlier. She didn't know it, but he spent much of July in and out of the hospital suffering from a kidney stone. They traveled back to her apartment together, and on the train she saw him eyeing some young girls, each no older than 10. She held her tongue. Home in Queens, she gave him a tour and offered him some water. She waited for him to say what was on his mind, but he said nothing. "Well," she said, "do you know why we are here?" "No," he said. "Why?" She told him, "We're not going to start that. You said you wanted to talk." He waved her on. "So," he said, "talk." She was nervous. She started from the beginning, talking about the first time he forced himself on her. "How do you even remember that?" he said. "Weren't you 3 years old?" This was his response. Not shock, not denial, just a casual dismissal. She went on. She talked about what she remembered from when she was 4. He denied it. She talked about what happened later. He disassembled, using some of the same excuses he'd used in the past. "I was only teaching you to clean yourself, teaching you how to become a woman." She started talking about their last time together when he tried to assault her and she wouldn't let him. Things moved quickly now. She was yelling, calling him a liar, saying, "You knew what you did was wrong." He stood up and took a step toward her. She reached for the pepper spray she kept clipped to her belt and sprayed him. They fought and fell to the floor, and the coffee table broke. She then looked for a way to restrain him and found some handcuffs, a novelty she'd bought, she says, after her friends teased her about her job as a rent-a-cop. She put them on him, then noticed he was having trouble breathing. She was in full panic now, scrambling for a way to revive him. She splashed him with water and started calling his name. He awoke and started screaming. She decided that she had to gag him and used a towel. She stuffed it in his mouth and wrapped duct tape around his head to secure it, leaving large holes so he could breathe. She then pulled down his pants and used scissors first, and when they didn't work well, she went looking for the scalpels. Just 1 month prior, she bought a package of 50 scalpels on eBay. To keep him still, she pressed her knee into his windpipe as she crouched over him. One cut was enough, and there wasn't a lot of blood, but she thought, "I'm going to take it off, and he's not going to hurt anyone else." She brought her father's organ to the stove and turned on the flame. Only the smell of flesh made what she'd done seem real to her. Her stomach lurched, and she shut it off and put the burnt organ in a paper towel and bolted from the house. Later, she would throw the paper towel under the boardwalk. She talked to 911 several times to report what happened and to see if he was alive. But by the time the police arrived, there was nothing to be done. The cause of death was asphyxiation. Her father, Eric, had choked on the towel before he had a chance to bleed to death from his wounds. Upon dialing 911 and informing the operators of Eric's condition, Brigitte claimed that she was on her way to the police station, but never showed up. Instead, she contacted her sister Carlene and told her what she had done. Carlene advised her to come to her home instead of turning herself in. When Brigitte arrived, Carlene called an ambulance. After seeing Brigitte with a scalpel in hand and still in shock, the sisters decided to check her into the Richmond University Medical Center psychiatric ward. She set up a website called SaveBrigitte.com to raise money for her sister's legal defense. After being discharged from the psychiatric ward on August 16, 2007, Brigitte was charged with second-degree murder and first-degree manslaughter and was held at Rikers Island. Brigitte claimed that she had not intended to kill her father, saying, "I felt that I had to stop him, to take away his weapon." She went to trial in September of 2009. Brigitte had been declared mentally fit to stand trial. She was depressed and disassociated emotionally, therapists said, but never delusional. The facts of the case weren't in dispute. The physical evidence showed how she did it, and she also made a confession video that explained why. On her home video titled My Reasons, she mentions Carlene's children explicitly, saying, "We both know what he wants to do with them." She talks about what she's about to do. "Somebody's got to do something," she says on the video. "Just know I'm doing this because I know he's not going to change. I'm really sorry, guys. This is something that just has to be done." The prosecutor argued in her opening statement, that whatever horrors Brigitte had endured at the hands of her father should have little bearing on the crime itself. "I'm not going to stand up here and say that the abuse did or didn't happen," Karen Ross said. "But what I will tell you is that at no time did she ever report it to the police, to child services, or even to members of her own family. Instead, this defendant chose to take the law into her own hands. She made a deliberate choice to make a plan, to execute that plan, and to put that plan into action." Brigitte's defense, Arthur Idala, offered the jury the same set of facts with a completely different interpretation. He wasn't saying a crime hadn't occurred. He wasn't even saying Brigitte wasn't in some way responsible. Instead, he was saying that the jury should consider not just what Brigitte did to her father, but everything her father had done to her. If she, the prosecutor, wants to talk about vengeance, you have to keep in mind revenge only exists because there was an original sin, he said, something that happened in the past. Then over the next hour, Idala went through every known detail of the abuse, sparing no details. The legal system wasn't getting it right, so she had to stop him, because he just wouldn't be stopped, he said. And the only way to stop him was to take off his weapon of mass destruction. Deliberations took just a day. On September 30th, 2009, the jury acquitted Brigitte of both second-degree murder and first-degree manslaughter. Instead, they found her guilty of second-degree manslaughter, the most lenient possible charge, for what was a premeditated act. Even Brigitte was shocked, as she had never thought that her story would inspire so much sympathy. Brigitte received an outpouring of support from public figures, including U.S. Senator Chuck Schumer and State Senators Dianne Savino and Eric Adams. Additionally, 7 of the jurors were so supportive of Brigitte that in the days leading up to her sentencing, they wrote to the judge asking him to give her no more jail time at all.
Handed down a guilty verdict, not for murder, but manslaughter in the second degree. And then, in a nearly unprecedented move, the same jurors pleaded for leniency. George Sarakis is one of them.
She's not a threat to society that needs to be kept in prison.
Charles Marshall, another.
If there's anyone who needs something good to happen to her in her life, it is Miss Harris.
Most who wrote letters to the judge were moved by what happened before the crime.
This young woman has been through a great deal.
I remembered the doll that
However, Judge Arthur Cooperman was unmoved. The jury demonstrated leniency that the court may otherwise have exercised, he said. He then gave her the maximum prison term, 5 to 15 years. However, she was released on parole after serving only 3 years in August of 2012. While in prison, Brigitte said, "I don't think killing him was the answer. I can't believe I actually did it. The only thing I had in my mind was to stop him." She also stated that she wants to work for the advocacy group Steps to End Family Violence when she gets out of prison. Since her release, Brigitte has worked for Steps and held many positions with Homer, Relay Delivery, and Caviar Incorporated, and completed programs for tech institutes. Today, Brigitte is now 40 years old and on her way to receive an associate's degree from Bard College in social work. She is also currently working for DoorDash part-time and a lead rescuer for rescuing leftover cuisine.
All right, so hello, my name is Brigitte Harris, and I have been volunteering for RLC since May of this year.
Why rescuing leftover cuisine? Why did you want to volunteer with them?
I initially heard of it from a volunteer from the downtown boathouse, and she knew that as a job I deliver food on my bike, so she thought it would be perfect for me. But I personally love it because I hate food waste. I grew up in a country that was going through a civil war. I know what it is to be hungry. I had a brother who died from starvation. So I love what they're doing, and I believe in it strongly, so that's why I continue to work for them. We just meet at the location that we're picking up the food from, and then walk to the next location. As a leader, I make sure I take pictures of the food, and then if they have a scale, weigh everything. If not, just guesstimate how much it weighs, and that's pretty much it. There was this one guy,
She told New York Mag journalist Robert Kolker that she had just one dream about her father. She said, We were in Africa. The weird part is he was protecting me from somebody else who had abused me. He ran the guy over with his Jeep. Kolker suggested that the dream could be about the life that she wanted, a life where she has a father who helps her. She laughed softly. Yeah, she says, which he never did. Let us all send well wishes and positive energy upon Brigitte Harris, and thank you for watching.